Brady McDonald, thank you so much for joining us. We're glad that you could be here today. 2021, 2022, we're early into it, but it's not been kind to a lot of people. Omicron still going on. With this fifth wave, we're all exhausted. Everybody's getting a little bit angry. For you, though, these past year and a bit has not necessarily been all bad. Tell us about this. Your third book is out. You've got one coming out still.
I have been blessed in this time that everybody's dealing with so much pain, so much frustration, the new world that we're living in. I've been honored that I've had many blessings over the past 12, 13 months that have really it's kept me going.
Tell us a little bit about Electricity Slides. That's what's out this year. It came out in December, I believe.
It came out, in December. It is an experimental work that it's a book that many people said would never see the light of day. I was told it's too weird of a book. It's too avant-garde. It's too eccentric. No one's gonna touch this book with a 10-foot pole. The book is a collection of vignettes that are loosely interconnected. It's very similar to, it's written in the same style as Naked Lunch by William S. Burroughs.
Okay.
It was written in what was called the Dadaist cut-up style. In the 1950s, a lot of the beatnik poets and authors would literally write random thoughts, random pieces of prose, pieces of stories, and they would physically, with a pair of scissors, cut them up and switch them around and change them around, try to make a cohesive story out of it. Sometimes not even try to make a cohesive story out of it. Naked Lunch is not cohesive at all. You can start that book in the middle and keep going. So I wanted to, it was something that I've wanted to do for a long time. I wanted to experiment with words, creating a book in the similar style, taking the writings that the book is composed of a lot of the performance art pieces that I used to do when we actually could get in front of an audience.
Right.
And do,
when we were allowed to see people.
So, when we were allowed to see people. So these were monologues, and one person plays and performance art pieces that I would deliver to audience in character. And so I took these various monologues and one-man shows that I was doing, took all the handwritten notes I did, wrote them on a typewriter, on an old typewriter, and actually found some ribbon and typed them all out, took the pair of scissors, cut them up, stitched them together, taped them together, and managed to create a cohesive storyline of this individual who, through no intention, I had no intention of creating a narrative, but the story that I ended up telling became very allegorical to what was happening to me in my life, that was happening in my world at the time. So it was a nice little bit of synchronicity that happened as the story. This was just an experimental piece I was working on that managed to tell snippets of my life.
I love this. So this is, as we said, 20 years you've been trying to get published to no avail. Tell us a little bit about that frustration, and then why suddenly in the last 2 years now everybody wants to publish you.
Well, in 2004, I was very honored to have my first book published by Kaganauts Press. And I was a young man at the time. I was very brash. I was very, I was a young man from a young Indigenous urban man who had his first little brush of fame. And after my 15 minutes or so of that, kind of went, I kept writing, but I would submit work. I was getting stacks of rejection letters. If I got a rejection letter at all, sometimes I never heard back. I would send manuscripts out. The manuscript would come back unopened with the rejection letter on top of it.
Oh my God.
So,
do you ever think that maybe this was creator's plan, though? Like maybe from that first little brush with fame, creator just went, nope, we're taking a break here?
I firmly believe I was being humbled because as I said, I was a young man, I was brash, I thought, well, I like this, I'm enjoying this. And I kind of maybe started to go a little to my head, and the powers that be So
thank God
was
for
a very
them,
humbling
right?
experience.
Thank Creator for them, because they do come down and smack us down when we need it. That is absolutely for sure.
Yeah. And so, to go from that experience, it made me a better writer. It made me a better, more careful with the words that I was using, more careful with the stories I was telling, and realizing who I was writing for. I was taking the thoughts, the emotions I had, and I was trying to pigeonhole them and batter them and butcher them into what I thought people would want to read. The narrative, the role that I was filling as a storyteller. I was moving away from that, and the lesson I had to learn was, what story are you trying to tell, and why are you trying to tell it? Are you trying to tell it just for people to buy your books, or are you trying to tell a story? And what's the message? What is your role as a storyteller? And I was very lucky and that I was able to learn that lesson finally after all those years of rejection, of trying, never giving up. The reason I never gave up was because there were many people that told me over my, in particular, like with my latest book, your work's never going to get published. Why are who you are as a person, where you're coming from, that's as far as you're ever going to get. It was, being a residential school survivor, being a light-skinned Indigenous person, coming from an urban Indigenous background, coming from a place where my world was the hood that I grew up in. I had many people over the years telling me, you're not going anywhere. And I realized that I had a lot of little eyes watching me, and the young next generations coming up.
Yeah.
If I gave up, what lesson is that going to teach them?
Yep.
And so that perseverance, that stubbornness to keep going, not just for myself, but so that those young people who saw me growing up saw me never giving up either. And I was lucky enough that was occurring at the same time. We had this kind of renaissance in Indigenous literary society, where we had, our friends like the late Richard Wagamese coming forward, Eden Robinson coming forward with her work, all these amazing authors and poets and writers who their work was being showcased not out of a sense of tokenism, not out of a sense of, okay, well, we got to make sure we got an Indian on the publishing list.
Right.
No, out of a sense of these stories need to be told, and having publishers who were actually interested in what we had to say, not just as a PR move, not so they could be on the right side of all this, but as people who honestly, genuinely want to hear what we as Indigenous people have to say. So I was very humbled and very blessed and honored that all these different paths were connecting at the same time.
Well, we're thankful that you are stubborn and that you stayed on this path. And I think we should all be a little bit thankful too that Creator took some time to get you to this point where you could share this gift with us and this perspective too. Well, actually, I've got two other things I want to talk to you about quickly here. Name change, huge thing for you. That happened last year. Tell us about that.
I was very honored last year to undertake something very, very special to me. When I was born, as many of your viewers know, and as many people who followed me, over the years know, my name when I was born was John A McDonald. That was the actual name I was born with. That was the name I was given at birth. And for 40 years, I carried that name. Through residential school, I carried that name. Through all the journeys that I've undertaken to rediscover who I am as an Indigenous person, who I am as an advocate, as a survivor, as somebody who shared these stories. This was the name I carried. And I tried for a long time to do the best I could with that name. But in our society as Indigenous people, as survivors, that is a very, very painful name. It was an albatross around my neck for a long time. And I was very honored that the government of Saskatchewan last year put in legislation that stated that as residential school survivors, we could change our names legally at no cost to us. So I was very honored that as soon as this happened, because I've been wanting to do this for a long time. I've been wanting to, as the other statues of John A. McDonald are coming down, this was one I wanted to bring down too. So I contacted Eugene Arcand, who's with the Survivors Council of the National Center of Truth and Reconciliation, a residential school survivor himself, was in residential school with my father. I approached him and I said, "This is my story. How can we make this happen?" And he said, "Absolutely." And he said, let's make this happen. And so if I'm not mistaken, I'm the first residential school survivor in the province of Saskatchewan to undertake this name change through his help. And I'll forever be grateful to Eugene and his team for helping with that. The name I chose, I want to continue to honor my family. The McDonald surname goes back a long way on my home community, the Muskeg Lake Cree Nation. There's not that many McDonalds left on our reserve. I noticed that when we buried an uncle of mine a couple of years ago, how many McDonalds there were not. Our surname is, our family is shrinking. Yeah. I didn't want to deny those ancestors, and at the same time, I want to acknowledge another who I am. I am the grandson of Métis leader Jim Brady. My grandfather was a very prominent Métis political leader during the 20th century. And in many Métis circles, he's held up there in the same regards with Joseph Brant and Riel and Dumont. So as his grandson, I wanted to continue to honor the legacy he started in advocating and being a warrior and being an activist. So I changed my name to John Brady McDonald, so that I could continue to honor my father's ancestors as well as my grandfather and the legacy of what he did as a Métis activist.
What is next for you in 2022? You've got one more book being published?
I have a book coming out later on in 2022 that's being published by Woolsack and Wynne. It's my first nonfiction book.
Oh.
It's actually one of the most challenging books I've ever had to write.
Isn't that interesting?
It's a collection of essays and my thoughts, my 2 cents, as it were, on different topics in terms of as an Indigenous person in the 21st century, in the roles we fulfill, in a lot of what's happening in our society, my take on it, my view on it. These started out as a collection of I don't want to say Facebook rants, but it's things I would share on Facebook. As I would espouse stuff on Facebook, write them out, and I was very honored. The publishers at Woolsack and Wynne took notice of it and said, "Hey, would you consider fleshing these out a little bit and creating an essay collection?" And I said, "Sure." And it's been a year of writing this wonderful book that's going to be coming out next year. That is, like I said, it was one of the most challenging books that I've written, because when you're a poet or when you're writing fiction, you can hide behind a turn of a phrase. You can, you can smooth out the edges. You can wax poetic, pardon the pun. But when you're writing from a nonfiction standpoint, when you're writing to share a message, and you don't have the bangles, you don't have the sparkles and the things you can hide behind. Yeah. It's just the truth, and it's my truth, and it's my my role as a storyteller, sharing my thoughts on different views, and getting to tell some stories that I've never had a chance to really tell in a book before. My connection with my grandfather, my claiming of England in 2000. So I get to talk a little bit more about some of the major aspects of my life. It's not an autobiography. Yeah. But it's I get to touch on a lot of the life I've lived, and the life I've been on thus far.
Well, we're going to be watching for that. It's still yet to be untitled, I do believe, but we'll be watching for that in 2022. And until then, we've got electricity slides to keep us entertained.
I hope everybody enjoys it. It's a book where it's a strange book, we'll put it that way.
Well, we look forward to delving into the weirdness. I think we all could use a little bit of that right now, right? John, thank you so much for taking time to join us. And congratulations. I was so happy when I saw on Facebook that you got that name changed. That it honestly was a highlight for me to see that.
Thank you very much. And I'm very, I'm very honored, very blessed, and I'm very grateful for all the the blessings and the medicine I've been given this year. And hopefully everybody on your team continues to stay safe and be protected and have good medicine around them.
Merci for that.